There's Katie. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 3rd. It is the 3rd today.
Yes.
May 3rd, 2017 meeting of the Abington Finance Committee. Tonight we have on the agenda to go over the warrant articles and including the budget. With petitioners, we extended an invitation to petitioners. The petitioner for the CPA article is not able to come tonight and will be attending next week's meeting. For anyone interested in hearing about that, next week, May 10th, will be the meeting for that. Tonight we will move forward with the other articles. I'd like to start out by inviting our esteemed town manager. What was that?
I'm sorry, you invited me to do what, sir?
To go over budget changes. I believe we have a final budget.
Yes. So I can speak from
Wherever
Like
you,
up here would be good.
stand up when you talk.
and tonight we have a peanut gallery.
Yes, apparently. I was hoping to be in the peanut gallery, but maybe I'll return to the peanut gallery.
As you know, we never allow you to stay in the peanut gallery.
Okay. Yes, a document that Deb was kind enough to pass around after some prodding. It was just a final adjustment. As I've indicated in the past, we're doing some analysis of a council and aging budget, particularly the salary of the director. The position is in the bargaining unit of the Managers Association, so it did take some conversation with that association, which culminated today. Although the agreement is is still open, that's a position that was never adjusted. It goes back several years, and unfortunately, well, fortunately or unfortunately, I did make an adjustment to the prior document in the amount of $7,500. The unfortunate part is that even with that, the salary is woefully inadequate based upon the surveys that we've done, and when I say we, I really mean Sue Moquin, the town accountant. The salary of the existing, as it stands today, is at about $17 and change, is actually about the minimum salary of an entry-level clerk in our clerical association, never mind our Managers Association. So with the adjustment, that's going to still be woefully inadequate and well below any area director of the Council on Aging, but trying to be cognizant of the fact that it's late in the budget process and that this is something that we probably should be dealing with over in steps over a few years, it's still a situation that will take some conversation with with the appropriate collective bargaining unit. The fact that I may have godlike authority under the charter to adjust salaries of department heads notwithstanding, it's late in the budget process, and in good faith, this is not a director of a department who is in any way coming and begging for increases or being unreasonable, but I think it's more of a moral issue rather than a performance issue or anything else.
Significantly.
It was before my time as town
Right, no,
manager,
I'm not-
but that's
yes,
my
but it was
understanding.
cut
That is my
significantly.
understanding. So even with this adjustment, it's still below a lot of people and individuals if you reduce it to a per hour basis within the clerical association. And so, again, it was really a gut check, you know, do we bring this up to the extent, you know, but we're not bringing, to bring it up literally $20,000 at this stage of the budget process, just, it really isn't feasible or reasonable. On the other hand, I think we have to be, understand that over a period of maybe a couple of years or a few years, we need to start making some progress in this particular area. Again, this is a position within a collective bargaining unit, and it needs to be treated that way, and this is an ongoing conversation that I am engaged in with that appropriate bargaining unit. So this is something to be dealt with over a period of time. So that being said, that is the only change to the document that you have had before you for a number of weeks now, and what I have distributed to you tonight. And at this point, I would consider it a final recommendation that I hope that the Finance Committee is prepared to adopt as your own recommendation ultimately for town meeting when you get to that point. So, and again, it's almost embarrassing, to be honest with you, to have a department and a director of a department whose salary has become so inadequate. And again, to some extent, I have to, I don't want to say compliment, but show some respect for her patience and you know, to allow us time to address it in an orderly fashion, so.
In generalizations too, for anyone that wasn't here during that period of time, that position was cut, and then it went to be 2 part-time positions, and the salary was lowered, and it was split between 2 people, and now you have one person doing that position, back to what that position previously was, at a much lower salary than it was.
Yeah, and my understanding too is approximately 5 or 6 years ago, there was some significant salary adjustments for department heads, and that position was not included in that group of increases, so it's never was really addressed at a time when it probably could or should have been. So here we are, and we're trying to make some steps in the right direction, so. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to deal with them, but as I said, I know to the extent.
Just for my knowledge base, so she's not in a manager's union?
She
is. In a clerical union?
She's in the manager's union, but I was trying to draw the comparison to the fact.
Clerical for the pay?
To the fact that she's being paid essentially.
As a clerk.
On a clerk basis.
Okay.
Yeah, so. Yeah.
So where did that money come from to be able to?
That money is primarily from the fact that we've been holding, I don't want to say holding outs, but we've been a little bit conservative with our new growth piece of taxation. So we just bumped that just a little bit just to deal with that. Again, it's not really material to the budget process overall. Any other questions? I'll go back to the peanut gallery until there's more questions regarding the specific warrant articles, if that's okay.
Questions before we move on? All right.
I appreciate it.
Peanut gallery.
No, and again, I do apologize this late in the budget process to have a late adjustment, but at least I know I've kept you warned that this was coming at least, so, thank you.
All right. We have our water superintendent. Dan, do you want to come up and go over your articles?
Good evening to all.
How are you tonight?
Excellent. Excellent. I have a series of articles. Basically, every one of these articles is a transfer out of the undesignated fund balance, excluding the bond article.
Dan, do you know which article numbers yours are?
I believe we start at
15.
15.
15. And don't know what order they're in, so if you want to just bring up the topic, I can address it for
The
you.
first one,
Article 15 is water mains.
Water meters?
Mains.
Water mains, that's the $1 million bond article.
Correct.
Yes. We are in the process of doing construction right now. We went out to bid about a year ago, and we had floated a $2 million bond at the time, and we had asked the contractor to give us an alternate bid to add thicket, Ekstrom, Circle Ave, in that area, which he did. And we signed the original contract for the 1.9 million, and he's out there doing, as you know, he's up on Wyatt and up that end of town, Greenwood. When the prices come in, it was really worthwhile, so I had contacted the town and said, you know, I'd like to enter an article. I'd like to change that 2 million to 3 million, and obviously I was too late. The article's already processed, so we were going to do it in the fall town meeting, which never come to fruition. So now we have a contract out there, it's about 390,000 for thicket. We've pulled the paving out of the contract, which is 475 right now, waiting for this additional money to finish out the project. This was figured in the budget last year, so it does not affect any of my rates or anything like that. It's just the authority to borrow another $1 million to complete this water project that's on the streets right now. We don't have to go out to bid again or anything because it was bid under the original contract. This is just adding alternate B to it. So, for good or for bad, we're also getting it at last year's prices.
the water mains, how old are the water mains that are there now?
Oh, that area of town, that's one of the older areas that we tried to have a capital plan, and that one should be addressed. I think that one's probably 75 years old up in that area of town.
So you're replacing water mains that are 75 years old?
Yes.
What do you think are those the oldest water mains in town?
Yeah, well, actually, the older ones were up in the Lyman area that we just did all of those. So those would be probably
My
the old.
follow-up question,
Those are probably-
everything that's gone on with the water department this week, how does that affect the water?
The problem we're having with the water, and it's good time as any to put it out, is really nothing to do with the water mains. What happens with your water mains, they become old, they become crustated on the inside, you get tuberculation. A 6-inch main can be down to 2 inches with all the buildup inside of it. What's going on this week here, and it's no different than any other week when we do our semi-annual flushing. We start twice a year, we start at our treatment plants, clean our treatment plants from top to bottom, all of our storage units in there, all of our filters, and then we take the pristine water, pump it out into the system from the plants out, so we're feeding everything with pristine water. That cleans the system. We do that every 6 months, and we stay on top of it. It's not special to Abington or Rockland, but the Northeast is very high in iron. It's in nature. We can't control it. We do everything we can to filter the iron out, to sequester it, to get it out. But over time, over the 6 months, it builds up a little bit more. It sits at the bottom of the mains. There's no problem. The water flows nice. You don't even know it's there. Then if we have a fire or a water main break and it agitates the system, it stirs all this sediment up and it starts coming out the faucets.
What's in that sediment?
Iron. It's strictly iron. It is not dangerous at all. It's aesthetics. It doesn't look well, and I'll be the first to admit that, to see a brown glass of water is pretty tough. But that's why we go out twice a year and flush the system under controlled conditions to get that sediment out of the mains. We tell everybody we're flushing, it's on the news, it's in the newspapers, it's on the cable, it's on the website. We're flushing. We started on April 18th. We'll probably be done another 2 weeks from now.
Do you
But-
put that in people's bills?
No. And the reason we don't is we bill quarterly.
Right.
So if you get a bill in January, you're gonna forget about us flushing in April. The only ones that can help in the bills is if we put it in the April bill, but that's one section of town. The dilemma we face this year, and it is really bad, is because of the severe drought we had last spring, last fall. Everybody forgets about that. But with that severe drought, we had to abandon our fall flushing. I did not have the water. So what we're doing right now is trying to clean up a year's worth of sediment instead of 6 months. So yes, it's worse, and yes, it's going to be, you know, the dilemma we're facing. But the bottom line is, it's perfectly safe. If it wasn't, everybody would be notified. It may not be appealing to get right now, but it's a nuisance that we have to go through to get our system clean again and get back on track. You see brown coming out of the taps and stuff, and that's when it's agitated. We do flush from 9 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, then knock off, so everybody can have supper and stuff like that. The residents, they come home from work, and then we resume again at 7 PM to 10 PM. Then we go home and we start the next day, and we do knock off at noontime on Fridays, let the system settle down before the weekend. But we're getting 90 to 95% of that sediment out of the hydrants. They're still showing up in faucets and stuff, and you have to let it settle down. But that's only 5% of what's, I mean, that's how bad the mains are. And it's only because we missed the fall flushing. So I tell everybody, you know, to just calm down. It's not the end of the world. It's a nuisance. It's a nuisance. That's
Is
really
it
what it
worse in some areas because of the age of the mains, or that?
What happens in different areas is not so much the age of the mains, but if the system is dead-ended, like if you get up to Ekstrom Circle area, the water gets up there, it loops up there. It's not that it's like when you're on Brockton Ave or something that's flowing right by you, it's nice and moving. If you get into a dead-ended area, yes, it is worse. And we do address those. We work with all the customers that we can. Everybody's concerned about their laundry and stuff like that. We have a product called Iron Out, and that's just what it's for, Iron Out. You get the iron in your clothes. You know, we're more than willing to give it to the people that, unfortunately, get to do 2 laundries, but the real problem up here is the iron, and the bigger problem is bleach. Bleach is an oxidant. So what it does is it takes that iron and automatically oxidizes it. So you could have a crystal clear glass of water, put some bleach in it, and it's gonna turn orange. And that's why you see it in your whites. Everybody puts bleach in with their whites, it oxidizes the iron, and it comes out in your clothes. It's not the end of the world. We can provide the iron out to remove it and make it better. So now they get that PR thing out of the way.
Thanks.
Do we have other questions for Dan on the water main article?
And that's the other thing too, is that, you know, we are spending a lot of money on our mains. It's a 100-year-old system. We're the oldest part of the country, so we're the oldest with water mains. And I say it every year. I mean, right now, people aren't happy with it, but you get 750 gallons for $3.75. You know, people have no problem going out and spending $3.75 for a bottle of bottled water. Well, they're delivering that in a brand-new system. My system's 100 years old, we're trying to upgrade it. Again, give me $3.75 a quart, and I'll give you gold-lined water mains.
The, just to make sure, the money to pay back the borrowing for the million.
Comes directly from water receipts.
Directly from the water receipts.
Yes.
And you, as you stated, the addition of the million does not impact the rates.
Correct. We figured it in last year when we were doing it. And we look at different things that, you know, when the bonds come to fruition. We just finished off paying our bond for the work we did on Adams Street and the work up on Spruce Street and stuff. So that pretty much is funding this bond. We get 2 more years left on our building bond. That'll, you know, we try to, as we take one off the books, put another one on and put it into the structure.
Other questions on Article 15? Anyone? Are there others in the a special?
It was stuff
Town
in the
meeting.
capital.
Capital, is that Article 3, capital?
Yes.
All right. Capital plan.
Yep. Well, you should have different items in there. I don't
Yep,
know.
we have-
50,000 for meters?
Yes, we had, what do we have? We have water meters for 50,000, we have Myers Ave roof for 50,000, we have the filter at Great Sandy Bottom for 50,000, we have the vacuum truck for 75,000, the turbine pump for 25,000, and the water regulation survey and testing for 15,000.
15,000, right. I can go over every one of those. They're very,
Detection for 10,000.
yeah, they're very short. 50,000 on the, yeah. The 50,000, well, why don't we go right under we'll start with the 75,000 for the vacuum truck. That article is actually, I thought it was already rescinded. We are not going to move that article. We are looking instead, but that was, one of our biggest problems that we face is controlling the sludge, the effluent from when we do our treatment. You know, it's a nice water that enters the system, but it comes out of Great Sandy Pond. It comes out of the Hannigan Reservoir, the Hingham Street Reservoir. You know, when we do the tours with the kids, I take them down to the pond and give them a glass of water, who wants to drink this? And, well, by the time they finish the tour, they realize that it's the work that's being done in the plant that makes that water potable. But with that comes sludge, residual that you have to get rid of, and we've been fighting that for years. So we had come up with a bright idea. We looked into, we really investigated buying a vacuum truck and vacuuming it out there from like Sandy Bottom. Does not have the ability, it's a sealed or a lined lagoon, so it doesn't really drain into the soil. So we were gonna pump it out of there, take it to Hingham Street, let it soil, but the more we looked at that, we said that's a far-fetched thing. We're putting more money into a total engineering review for a complete review of managing sludge from top to bottom. Again, it's not special to Abington or Rockland. Anybody that has surface water has sludge, and we're all facing the same thing. Right now, we do put it into draining bags, or it has to be 20% solid before we can put it on the truck and ship it down to Bourne, or it used to be Taunton. The landfills are all filling up, and we're running out of places for it. So we have decided that we're not gonna spend 150 on the vac truck, which was 75 from each town. Instead, we're gonna spend 50 grand right now in engineering for review and coming up with a solid plan for sludge. And that's not even an article, that's something we're working in out of existing budget this year. So we can remove the 75,000, 25,000, it's a $50,000 raw water turbine pump for Sandy Bottom. What basically happens is you have to pump the water. The raw water comes in, it flows by gravity into the raw water pits, then you have to pump it up and get it through the filters and everything. We have 2 pumps, and they alternate back and forth. One of them is in pretty bad shape, and we're gonna replace that this year, and probably come with an article next year to replace the second one. But
How old are the current pumps?
that plant is what, 25 years now?
So they're the original?
Oh, it's the original, yeah.
Okay.
Almost everything in Sandy Bottom is original.
Okay.
But again, that's 25 from each town, and you know the dilemma we face. If one of the towns says no, then the other town loses out. So we have to make sure that we have the support of both towns when we do it. The $15,000, that's our cross-connection program, and that's state regulated, that we have to come in and test we have to have devices on anything with like fire sprinklers and stuff of that nature. That way you could have a backflow situation where you could, if you had a break, you could suck water out of the fire system back into your water mains, and then it makes it into houses. We have systems all over town. They get tested once or twice a year, depending on the severity of it. But this is something that, it's a wash article. I put it in there every year, $15,000 for the company to come in and do the testing annually on all of these things. We do charge the customers. We get the $15,000 back, but rather than put that in my operating budget, I put it in as an article, we pay it out of the article, then the money in an article, or any of the funds to pin, turn back into undesignated fund balance anyways. So that's basically just a cyclical article, so that we don't have to take it out of our operating budget. And this has nothing to do with Rockland, this is an Abington article, but Rockland has the same article in their warrants for their backhoe devices in the town of Rockland.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding that correct. So it's a capital item that you're purchasing services,
Yes.
not an actual item.
Correct, that's services. The next item is, again, Sandy Bottom is starting to see its age, and I try to do things efficiently as far as we have 2 filters at Sandy Bottom. The plan is to overhaul one of them this year. That's $100,000 a filter. And $50,000 will come from Rockland, $50,000 will come from Abington, and then next year I'll probably do the same article again, and rather than, you know, put everything up front, I try to space it. And the good news about all of this, as far as I'm concerned, is this comes out of my undesignated fund balance. It's not borrowing, it's using money that's there. The truth be told, I don't have enough to do 2 of them this year, so let's do one this year and see where we stand next year. The next article is the leak detection. That's an annual thing. We do that just being proactive. We have a company that comes in and soup to nuts goes around with leak detection equipment and listens underground for any leak that, you get water main leaks. A lot of times they don't surface. And you could have a leak running underground for quite a while, you never know it. I don't know if you remember 2 or 3 years ago, we had that leak that we were losing water in our tanks, we couldn't find it for almost like 2 weeks, and it happened to be down the end of Brockton Ave, where it was just running into the wetlands in there. You know, he found it. But that's $10,000 for each town. He comes in and he does all of Abington, all of Rockland, and any leaks we find. That in itself pays for itself, because if we find the leaks and we don't have to produce that water to just dump into the ground, like lawn sprinklers do, but, so that's what that one is. And then the purchase of the water meters, that's our annual program. We do it every year, $50,000 a year. That buys me about 500 meters. And I try to change them out every single year. So a meter is made to last 10 years for efficiency. So having 5,000 accounts, I try to do 500 meters a year. That's an annual article. And the final one, Myers Ave roof, also plays into part of my decision to not to purchase the sludge vac, was because we just had a analysis done on Myers Ave roof, and that's it's in pretty bad shape, and it should be done immediately. And that's gonna be a $100,000 project, so instead of spending 75 or 150 on the vac, I'm spending 100 on this, and then I'll take the other money out of my operating budget this year and do the engineering analysis. So that, in a nutshell, is what I have in front of me for articles.
Just a quick question on the Myers Ave roof. How old's that existing?
That existing roof is, that plant's back in the 80s, so how old is that? 30 odd years old, yeah.
If of a roof.
Well,
Longer than the life of the roof. That, you know,
times changed though, too. There's a lot of better design out there than what was
Yes,
put on
true.
that. It used to be the old tar and
Was.
gravel, and,
Was the life of a roof.
yeah.
Questions? Anyone? All right.
All right.
Dan, anything else for us?
Nope, that's it, yeah. Thank you for the time, so I can
Thank you for the
do my spiel
explanations.
of,
Very good explanations.
thank you.
thank you, appreciate it, Dan.
Thank you.
Can I have this warrant?
We have our Gosh, I'm totally blanking. We have Sue Moquin here. If you would come, town accountant.
Some level of expertise.
I don't know why the word accountant was slipping my mind there, but.
Yeah, some people say that with a snicker. I'm just kidding. About me, they say that about me. Okay.
Sue, welcome. Always good to have you.
I don't know, I mean, obviously, the cruisers speak for themselves, I don't wanna. I'm sorry.
Page one.
I'm sorry, my
The rest of the capital.
assumed you were, yeah, I probably shouldn't have. And the town hall HVAC, these are malfunctioning, to a great extent, Wayne kind of keeps these alive with the help of some hired maintenance help and between the town hall and library. These are original with both buildings, and quite frankly, 4 of them have, I think 2 in the library have actually quit. Compressors, and so they're actually functioning on, both buildings are functioning on half power, so to speak. So, they actually need to be replaced, they don't actually work. And I think 2 of them in the town hall, one of them in the town hall actually is limping along, and 2 of them quit, and the same with the library, where 2 of them actually don't work at all, so it's time to go. So, with regard to the town hall, the Vadar financial software, that sounds rather intimidating. So, what's more intimidating than a town accountant? So I don't know if, Sue, you want to speak to that?
Our current software company has changed hands, like, over the last 5 years, 3 times, and we're not getting the support that we need from them, and they're actually getting away from the financial side. So we decided to move into, with a company that actually does municipal finance, actually located here in Massachusetts, and they probably have about 30% of the Massachusetts communities that they're working with, so they're very good with municipal finance. And they provide excellent support. I've worked with them before. We've met with them a couple of times. It's actually not a big dollar amount if you look at the other companies that charge for an upgrade.
The current company is
KBS.
KBS system.
Which is
and
actually now, it was Springbrook, and now it's Acela, and they also bought SoftWrite. So there's just too many companies that they're trying to merge in one, and when we're trying to get support from them, we tried to upgrade our tax system, and it's been a year and a half, and they haven't responded to us. So we just don't want that continued non-response.
Yeah. It seems seemingly getting out of the business of municipal software in Massachusetts, which isn't a growing business as one can imagine, because there's only 351.
Fairly stable.
And there's not going to
client
be more
base.
municipalities in Massachusetts unless something
Times
drastic happens. And after this initial investment, our annual maintenance isn't going to be any more than
No, it's
it
almost the
currently
same
is
amount.
either, so. But it's time. How long have we had KBS, to the best of your knowledge?
The
or-
upgraded KVS we've had since I've been here, so 5 years, but then there was the old KVS that they had since 2001, I believe.
Okay. So, okay. If anybody has any questions about that, okay. The Town Hall Library curb repair, I think most of you come and go can see that it's crumbling, and I know the library trustees have also expressed their concerns about, obviously not just the sightliness, but the safety issues with regard to that. This is an estimate. Our DPW has done just some quick cost estimates based upon the linear footage. Ultimately, in the next couple of years, we're probably gonna need to a parking lot repair, paving, grading project. But in the meantime, we really need to take care of the curbing for safety issues. So that will, and Cindy mentioned it to me before the meeting too, that and I confirmed ultimately these have to be bid, whether it's through taking advantage of a regional procurements or our own bid, individual bid, but these all have to be bid eventually. This is just an estimate based upon linear footage by the DPW at the moment.
Which specific curbs?
This would be actually the entire, everything in front of the town hall and the library. Every piece of granite curbing you see is what is intended to be replaced.
Okay.
And the next one is obvious, paying off what was a purchase of property up here on Glenwood's Way last year. It was not concluded as to whether we were gonna amortize it or not, but in this particular year where we've got such a healthy free cash, we may not see again. It doesn't seem to make sense to put it in the bank while we're borrowing money, so, at least to us, but taxpayers may, FinCom and taxpayers may have a different opinion. DPW, Parks and Grounds Division is recommending a new heavy-duty lawnmower. And I'm sorry, we didn't think to have John come in and speak to that. If you'd like further explanation on that, we can certainly provide that at a future meeting or in
I know that's about
memo
the,
form if you'd
I
like.
mean, just from being on here, I know that is, Sean can probably remember too, that's about the cost of what I've seen prior years when we're replacing that type of equipment. I don't know when the last time is that we,
Didn't we already talk about this, though?
We talked
Last
about
week.
it
We talked
week.
about it last week,
Yeah.
He
yes.
I think we're on the same
actually got
price.
He actually got a quote for it.
I believe the.
I think
believe the
Pete asked the
comment
question,
from last
Rick
week
retorted,
was,
kind of
"This
saying,
is
hey,
not
that's the
your
cost of something really big with a big
run-of-the-mill
deck.
John Deere
Yeah.
Right.
tractor that we're talking about." So,
Play on, okay. All right. The next one, I did
We started to
dig up
talk about
some
the
notes
next
on this that Dory had from the submission, and what this would pay for is for what's called a mini-split HVAC system for the cabin in the Grove, which some of you may have heard referred to in the past as the so-called Girl Scout cabin. This has been renovated by a combination of volunteers with some labor from both volunteer labor, as well as Public Works Department. Some are aware, some may not be aware, that there was approximately $5,000 donation from Lowe's at their cost, so that's not retail, but Lowe's cost, that had been organized by a volunteer, as well as labor from Lowe's to upgrade the inside of that. The donation of a couple sinks by Abington residents, a donation of a fridge, and I don't know, some of you, a lot of you I know have been in there, I'm sure. I'm not sure about everybody. And what this would do is this would provide for year-round heating system primarily, but some AC, so that it could be heated not necessarily with a stove, so that it could be not just 3, but potentially 4 seasons even, if there was a call for it. Again, this isn't for scouts necessarily. This could be used for, there's been a call, and actually for not just scouting, but for groups, family reunions, et cetera. This could be utilized for user fees for, as a revenue source. I mean, let's not be naive. This isn't gonna be raising major dough, but it presumably could pay, raise some user fees for the DPW, Park and Rec division of the DPW over a period of time. If there's gonna be a major investment in this facility, it would have to probably be done through CPA funds in the future. This is obviously a minor investment. But obviously, if there's going to be people using this for any significant events, we can't be having wood stoves and fireplaces. It would have to have some sort of heating system that's safe. So that would be the intent. Obviously, it would be nice to be able to raise a few funds through user fees. It would be nice to be able to complement the volunteer dollars and the volunteer labor that's been put into this facility with a small investment. So that would be the goal of this investment. Some of you know some of the people that have volunteered here, including, I know Jan Prowl had donated some of the accessories here. Some of you might, I think, know Doug Ulwick, who has put a lot of time and effort and organized the donations through Lowe's. Actually, the donation of both labor and money from Lowe's. So that's the intent of this. If you'd like some additional information, I'm sure I can organize that, but that's essentially what this is about.
No, last week people had questions. on this.
Yeah, and I wish I had more information last week for you. I wish I did, but, you know, again, if there's gonna be any major investment, it's gonna have to come from CPA funds later on. This is something that is, again, a small investment that would make this, barring any significant weather at a given time, would make this available 3, probably 4 seasons for you know, events. You know, again, not just scouting, but family events, family reunions, you know, for rent through the Park and Rec Department, for a fee, of course.
Like, I stand by what I said last week on this. Like, I don't agree with it on the fact that we're putting $6,000 to put AC in the cabin in the Grove. We don't even have AC in the camp building that is generating funds right now. We use it during the summer for Eager Beaver. Kids are going in there. We're not putting AC in that building. We're putting AC in something that could potentially give us maybe $2 or $3 grand a year. And I'm just stating my opinion
That's
is,
fair.
you know.
Well, it's primarily the issue is heat, primarily for the winter months where you know, people could, but to have this particular system would also be able to provide AC too. I mean, again, don't claim to be an expert, Mike, please. I think
And I
you
know
already
that.
gathered that from my comments, that
Can
I'm
I
not an
just-
expert in HVAC, but this particular mini split system would be capable of producing AC, and you wouldn't put this in just to produce heat. But it's a low-cost system that would basically make this usable primarily for, you wouldn't be probably using the AC feature. The point is to be able to produce heat, because you don't really want people using a wood stove for safety purposes. That's the primary point of the exercise here, is you don't want, for safety reasons, you don't want people using this for a camp environment, and a lot of times, because you don't want to burn down the cabin in the Grove. That's just not the point. So, anyway, for what it's worth.
Oh, and I understand that, and like I said, it's my opinion, and I'm voicing my opinion as we
No,
all do.
Understood.
And
I just want to say first, I love that people have volunteered their time and that Lowe's has, that the Grove is probably my favorite place on earth. Growing up here and spending a lot of time down there, my opinion, the cabin. And, you know, you don't have heat and air conditioning because you're in a cabin. Also, though, I think it opens up a whole other can of worms. We're having a hard enough time over the years with not being able to really patrol in that area as much as really should be done. The fireplaces that were down for like cooking, that were down there, had to be removed at one point because of the teenagers.
Yeah.
And I know that like the new flag was put up, and then there was vandalism with that. And same thing with some of the buildings that are currently there. I know from spending a lot of time there, the buildings that, the part of the Grove that does generate, or at least self-funds, the bathrooms, and the lifeguard, the shack. I would think if we were, and the camp, which has been around for many years, I think if we were going to be looking to prioritize funds in that area to kind of, the cabin that's kind of not used as much as everything else, and the other buildings that are used on a very regular basis that could be brought up a little bit more. But also, where would the budget, what budget would it come out of to pay the heat and the electricity? once you have it in there, then every year you have to either get oil or gas or whatever you're putting out there. And there's an electric bill, and so that would need to be in someone's budget. And I don't see,
Well, presumably those would be paid through the revolving fund of recreation, up through the DPW revolving fund for the site. But once
So if
again,
you were-
but again, your points are well
yeah,
taken.
if
Very
you were
well
able, I see what you're saying, like if you, but that kind of speaks to
Well
my, if
taken.
we all of a sudden are letting people rent that building, and quite honestly, we haven't had enough time with the dogs. That's been like such an ongoing issue. To then have another,
Yeah, yeah.
spot that you need to police year-round, because if you have people renting it for family reunions, and there's going to be food and, I would assume, beverages of, it just I think it opens up a big can of worms that we don't have. I think if we had a larger budget, that we could, say, oh, we can afford the electricity for this building, we can afford to put this building online and use it, in that way. I think it's a great idea, like, for the future. I just think right now it might be a little bit premature.
Maybe if we had more
Just
information
out
about
of
potential.
curiosity, how many months is like the Eager Beaver camp used?
All
versus-
summer.
So 3 months, 2 months?
I would say June, July, August, 3 months.
So you're looking at a 3-month usage versus a potential 12-month usage?
Right.
And then, so if you have something at the
I
cabin
think
in the
it's
Grove, then you.
guaranteed 3-month usage versus a
Right,
potential.
but I'm just wondering, I just
But-
didn't know what the
Yeah.
usage
But
of the.
yes.
It's 3
So-
months, but,
Have,
and again, it is self-funding, so that's
Do you
why
know-
But
we don't
couldn't the
have like
cabin in the
a.
Grove be self-funded? Like if you're renting it out and
Well, that would be
having
the- that would
someone,
be
you
the
would
point. If
have
it's
to
n-
have a police detail.
If it's not,
You would
then
have to pay
we're not,
like the cost of.
we're not interested in sustaining a bill for this
Right.
location, we'll put it that way. Either it's.
Just as a new member of the
Yeah,
finance
it's either
committee,
self-funding
I
or
just-
it's not open. That's the point, but.
But I mean, something to use
Yeah, I
year
mean-
round for the town, I mean.
I'm
Do
sorry.
you know if any assessment has been done of the primary building there as
I
far
don't know
as?
what the-
Yeah, no,
As far as air
not,
conditioning
not
needs?
recently,
I know we talked
not
about it,
recently.
I know we talked about last week how in the summer it gets very muggy in there,
Sure.
especially on rainy days when the camp needs to move
Yeah,
in.
not, not recently that I'm aware of. No, and listen, very valid points, valid points. Again, this has been a terrific project.
Oh, I think it's great for
Terrific
people.
project, and certainly, like I said, I think,
And it can still be used.
there are clearly, and we'll get to some, much, I mean, this is small money, obviously compared, there are much larger priorities for the town that are obviously more near and dear to all of us, so I don't want to take up our night on something that's.
But we also just said
But,
how
you know,
we're, like, we have a salary that's
Clearly
grossly,
more important. Yeah,
grossly is not the right word,
Sure,
but,
but-
when you're looking at those numbers and,
Significantly.
it's significantly underfunded. and
Right, but,
so looking at,
We have a.
Small money in
Right.
context of the entire budget,
Right.
but a decent amount of money to each person.
But if there are clearly more issues and questions to be answered before there's a comfort level, then.
do we know, I had asked last week about, anything, like the CPA funding this. Does anyone?
Well, it's obviously not on the list for this year. That process is concluded for this year, and there's a legal process that it must go through, so, and like I said, it's, so that would be something for another day, if that's the case.
But that is like a type of CPA project. that could be-
I'm not sure, I believe it would be qualify under the recreation piece. That's why I say,
I mean, I'm just
that's why I
thinking
said
about it.
for any more significant issues or upgrades to that facility, I would think would qualify under the recreation piece, if the, so. But, again, I don't want to get too off track, but like I said, it's a small investment that I do think has value, and I think it's worth consideration, but once again, it's also not something that I think, if people aren't comfortable with, then that's okay too, but I do believe that would be money responsibly spent by the proponents, I have no question about it, and again, would be under the jurisdiction of the Department of Public Works. This isn't, it's not like volunteers are getting $6,000. This is town.
No,
money,
no,
you know, so, but. All right.
Other-
Just
Cindy.
one quick
Next.
question on the mini split system. How big is the cabin that we're talking about? It's not big, is it? Because I had
Smaller
mini
than this
splits, I had somebody come out and give me an estimate in my house for mini splits. My whole house was 12.
Yeah.
So $6,000 for a one-room cabin, for
You're
one
more of an
thing.
expert than I am on mini split systems.
You know, my neighbor just
Guarantee
put
it.
them in, she's loving it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you know, I looked at it and I agree with everything Barbara says. There's been enough problems and stuff up there that, you know, we don't need to potentially buy one more right now.
I definitely think it's a good usable
a good
spot.
usable spot. It's just,
Maybe
it's
we
tough.
have a little bit more time to see, like, okay, well, maybe we
How
rent it
much-
out while
how
it's,
much it's used.
Like
while it
what is
doesn't
the
have heating and air
potential?
conditioning.
Yeah,
See
what's
what
the
the,
potential?
you know,
Yeah.
draw is for it, what it
Well,
can
that's
bring in,
fine.
can it self-support? I mean, that's just a budget that's been,
Yeah.
you know, had, the Park and Rec budget is,
You have institutional history I don't have, too.
well, it's
Yeah.
just, yeah,
Park and Rec.
it's had a history of really being cut, and, so,
Well, I do think that this is, and I think, have anybody been in that cabin recently? Prior, before and after?
I've seen some great
It's
pictures of
been
the
just
inside.
a
Same here.
tremendous,
Pictures.
tremendous
Looks
transformation. To take something, the condition that it was in, and the asset that it now is just remarkable. It's remarkable.
Great thing,
And,
yeah.
so again, to kind of capitalize, to try to capitalize on the effort that's been made, speaking from that perspective, without having, and again, this is not a criticism, but when you don't have that perspective, you're at a little bit of a disadvantage. But that being said, if this waits for another day, that's okay. It really is okay. It's not the end of the world, really. So, these other issues are much more important, no
Yeah.
question about it. But I would encourage you, if you get a chance, and then, in the next, weeks or months, please, take, if you get a chance, to take a peek down there, so,
Love to see that as a CPA project,
yeah.
really would.
And I would say the general feel that I get from this committee is that that's something that should wait.
That's fine. It might be one of those where it might be worth, and I can certainly discuss this with the board too, maybe this, maybe find its way off the warrant even, so that we don't have, maybe get some consensus on moving this to maybe a future meeting, and so we don't create enemies over what is and will continue to be a real good project, so.
Yep.
Okay.
We've said our piece on
I
that.
think we have, but again, hopefully we save our disagreements for real issues then.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Board of Health.
yes, this speaks for itself, refreshing, purchasing more trash recycling carts because we need them. Anything? I know you usually get the first round of sue. Can we order them yet? So, the next issues, I think you're familiar with both of them. The one thing, I will specifically, the textbooks, there's no question that the textbooks is a piece that had originally been proposed within the school budget. That's equates to approximately 1% of the school operating budget, of which is now proposed at about a 2.3% increase. Currently, that does essentially remove that piece, textbook piece from the budget, and is part of the overall compromise on reaching a agreeable budget for this town meeting coming up. It's also a matter of, I know that the school administration are not solidified yet exactly what programs they wanted to purchase quite yet going into FY18, across which, and what technologies yet either. So for them to be specifically, putting in an exact number, they were at a little bit of a disadvantage too, so, is that fair, Sue, based upon our in-depth conversations? So to be building up an operating budget which continues to compound and grow off a number, I think we weren't particularly comfortable with that. I think that's a disadvantage for going forward when you know, because we all know how budgets compound from a base. So that was part of the reasonable agreement that we felt. And again, I know it was, I think somebody used the analogy of kind of like, you know, cruisers or other type of operating kind of recurrent capital. So I know that it's been put in the context of, you know, yes, oftentimes that's kind of, you know, kind of taking it out of the budget. Well, in some ways that's true, but I really do hope that the FinCom is willing to support this as kind of a capital or article piece, because it really is a significant overall part of the gentleman's good faith agreement we had with school administration and how to make the FY18 budget work for next year, so.
And it almost seems like a good idea to leave a piece of it, maybe not that much for the years going forward. They do have still a piece in their budget for recurring materials that they need for these textbooks, but this is only covering a portion of their grades. So next year they're gonna need another portion, and they, you know, so it's just like Rick said, the cruisers, you know, you don't put them in the police officer, in the police department's budget knowing it's a capital. This is definitely a capital item of tangible textbooks, and then they have a little bit still for
It's possible.
workbooks.
It's possible, but it's possible that some of this carry forward may relieve stress on the FY19 budget, which could maybe be helpful for an FY19 budget process too. We'll have to wait and see, so.
Peter?
Have you heard anything more about the exterior lift? 'Cause that was kind of like,
We haven't heard
All over
anything
the
more
place.
from what we discussed last week, if
Okay,
that's
that's
what
what
you
I
need
got.
No, it's a dilemma, and I know Peter and Felicia will agree that it's a bit of a dilemma, that we're not at a place yet where we feel that number can be reduced. They certainly hope to be able to obtain an appropriate waiver to be able to spend significantly less. And if that's the case, that funds that remain would be available for reappropriation, either by town meeting for another, whether it's another school project, or whether it's by reappropriation for any other town expenditure. So
okay.
it is a dilemma, no question about it, that we don't know at this point how much less than 85,000 would be necessary. On the other hand, to go into, begin a fiscal year without any type of resources available to address a handicap accessibility issue is taking a bit of a chance. I'm sorry.
I just have a question just for educational purposes. So, and I meant to drive by the school and I forgot. So it's if you go in through the gym, that's all the same level, right? But that's not the lift that we're discussing at the program? Or are we talking about all the?
There isn't a
handicap
lift.
There's
The
not a
lift is
lift there.
actually in the,
Thank
so
you, Barbara.
where the gym is right there, there's those stairs that go up.
Right.
To the right of that, if you're looking at the
Right,
building.
right.
So that ramp leads to, there's an outdoor ramp.
Right, right.
So that ramp leads to a door, and when you go in
Inside.
that door, then you're in about a 5 foot by 5
Right,
foot.
right.
Like, and you either go up
Up or down?
or down.
So there's no accommodations that can be made to make a, and I'm not saying,
I'm sorry.
You can either get a chair to replace
Right.
the chair that's there
Yeah.
now, or get a lift that goes from the bottom
bottom
level
all the way
up.
to the top, okay.
Right, and
I just couldn't picture it in my head after last meeting and I meant to go there.
As all this is being driven by the new school, right?
by the, I'm sorry.
The new school, everything getting moved around and
It's
so
a
forth.
musical. It's like-
Yeah. And I believe there's gonna be money left over in that budget. Couldn't this be taken out of that? Has anybody asked?
It can't be. The MSBA's, they're very specific about that building and that project.
And especially where those funds are, the town expenditure, those funds are debt exclusion. So,
To
debt
the
excluded
specific
funds,
cause.
you know. I wish we could, Peter.
Yeah.
That would be great. That would be what. But once again, you know, it's, I know it's all of our hope that $85,000 is significantly more than is necessary, but that would depend upon what waivers they can get for handicap accessibility waivers that they could get to essentially replace what's there now versus having to do a significant upgrade.
Will you just explain the process about how, say, they're approved for $85,000 and it costs $50,000?
Yes.
And
The
then
question is, what happens to the other 35?
remainder of
What
the
is
money
the
gets
process
turned.
that we have to go through to reappropriate or change the appropriation on that 35,000?
So when they're finished with the project, if the money is there at the end of June, it can get closed out to free cash. Or if you know by special town meeting that the project's done and you want to use the money for something other that's specific, then you can revote it before the books close.
So you have to put an article
Yes.
forward.
So it's
It has
either
to
an
go to that
article-
town meeting. You can't just go and spend,
No.
the school can't just come in at
Spend it on something
$50,000,
else.
have $35,000 left over and say, actually, we need this too, so
No.
we're gonna use it to spend on
No,
that.
it
It
has to be
has to go
specific to
back to
that.
town meeting.
Right, and if, for instance, and again, this is gonna sound like, you know, accusatory, but it's not, but if any department, we'll say, tries to charge an expense to an article that's not
intended.
appropriate for that article, it's gonna be denied at the town accountant's level. Right, that's why no one likes the town accountant. In any town,
Except
it's not personal.
taxpayers.
It's not personal, in any town, no one likes the town accountant, so.
Other questions on either of the two school items?
I have no, just comments, and I can
Comments.
withhold my comments.
You're
Let me go through our
you are
votes.
awfully quiet.
Scathing.
We have yet, well, I think you've asked. You can't, I don't believe, I think you guys are not gapped. The term capitalize always bothers me. What Rick says doesn't, which says we have a gentleman's agreement to take it out of the budget. That's why we're doing it this way. That's the only point that mattered. I'm not saying I shut down and listen, but it's a textbook. No offense, it's part of the operations. Your job, if you're gonna match costs to operations, you match cost to operations. And part of the operation of the school department is to educate people. They need books. That should be part of their operating budget. But there's an agreement between the leadership and the community to say, we're doing it this way. I'm cool with it. That's what I heard. That's what I understand. And everything else is just noise to me.
In fairness, I suspect if it were not specifically part of the capital plan, but a separate article, from a format standpoint, that would that make you feel differently?
Again, he only asked.
If it
I
wasn't
was
called-
sitting here
No.
quiet as a clam, not saying a word.
If it wasn't called.
Which is what scares me.
My point is, if it wasn't called a capital,
We kept using that as the reason for the definition. We're gonna capitalize this, we're gonna use this part of the cap. I'm like, guys, stop it. It's a book, it's a piece of paper.
I'm sorry, yeah. No, because I don't disagree that a book or a piece of paper isn't necessarily a capital article, that's all.
I can go back and forth on, Sean and I have had
But
this
if it was just, if it was
conversation.
just a separate article as a, you know,
I know what you're saying.
like a school transportation article, if it's a separate article, it's effectively the same thing. It's just not contained in a menu, that's all.
Sean and I have had this
I
conversation where
think
you
the-
can see some things as,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes I will agree with him, like, well, you're right, that is part of the operating budget, but then somebody else makes the argument that,
Yeah.
well, it's really capital, you know, you can
Yeah.
kind of go back
Only
and forth
because
on
they can
that.
use
But-
it for multiple
right.
years. They use these textbooks for 10 years, so.
Do you depreciate them?
True. No, you don't.
No, we don't. We don't depreciate our library books either.
Well, I understand that.
Do you
But it's
sell
part of the
them on
public. You don't
half.com?
consider your library books capital.
No,
I'm sorry?
Do you sell them on half.com when you're done with them?
no, our books are so old that you couldn't
You
sell
couldn't
them on
even know when
half
they're gonna
dot.
No, so, but- Very interesting, interesting.
I think the
conversation to be
I think the
started with
understanding is that
Yeah.
this was an agreement put into place for this year's budget to
Right.
make ends meet for this year's budget.
And again, it
I
doesn't-
think a concern from our side is that that does not mean that it is necessarily a standing practice.
Not at all. And again, in fairness, you didn't see it last year, and
No,
it doesn't
correct.
mean it would be part of, what you'd see in FY '19. And again, you know, an agreement that, you know, you know, the financial team has reached to try and make FY '18 work without,
Absolutely.
you know, reductions in service does not mean that the finance committee has to recommend it too, but we certainly hope that you do, that's all. We hope that you do. It was certainly in good faith, no question about it, so.
We went over the water department.
Yes, and we even learned that an
Learned.
article's been withdrawn tonight.
Absolutely.
We learned something tonight, didn't we?
Learn something new every day. Town is saving
Sure
money.
that the final warrant, the selectmen accept hopefully tomorrow night reflects that, so.
I think that would
Been
be good.
productive.
And then the last one on there is sewer. And I don't know if you have any information on the sewer
I actually do not. and,
What is it?
articles.
sewer-
Manhole lining for 175,000 and stormwater management permit for 55,000.
Which they're taking from sewer retained earnings, so it's.
Yeah, it's
Right.
like similar to the water, where it's coming from their own.
Yes, that's all.
Feel free to scroll down if you want to.
I was surprised to see a permit on the capital.
It's not really a permit, it's an engineering study,
Yeah, it's
and
federal.
that's what they call it.
Federal.
That makes more sense.
They have their own speak.
I'm sorry, I did not think to invite John.
I think that's okay. I think this is likely very similar to what we talked about in the similar things to the water department, larger maintenance items that are not every year operating budget type of a situation.
Can I ask, because I missed a couple of meetings, so, did, at the time that, John was in going over the sewer budget, did we not know that it was gonna be an article? We just didn't go over articles when we
Yeah,
went
you
over
weren't going
budgets?
over articles, you were just going over the budget, so it wasn't brought up.
Because usually we go over when, just because, just note to self, it saves us time.
Yeah.
That when they go over their budget, a department head, if they have a warrant article, we go over it then too, just so that sometimes then we don't need to ask them to come back and then,
We did talk about it with Dan when he was here, and he didn't have things, I
anything.
think he didn't have
any
things
warrants
finalized
Yeah,
yet.
I can't remember what the timing of,
I
This
think
document
he-
was definitely made available afterwards, but
Yeah.
they knew what they were asking
Asking
for,
for,
so
right.
it might be
Maybe we-
good to ask
Yeah.
next year, do you
Yeah.
have anything
Yeah.
on the capital?
we can be a little more efficient next year, right?
Well, you know what, like I said, I missed a couple of meetings, so I'm not complaining, I'm just saying, you know, for the future that, should I miss a meeting and not, or
That'll
be at
teach
it and not
you.
remember.
That'll teach you.
Well, no, and not remember to say, hey, you know, we should.
Usually when you
go over
miss
there.
meetings, you end up as chairman, that's the
Yeah,
problem.
they sign you up for every liaison.
Were there other articles for Sue
The only other
specifically?
monetary article was the school transportation, the
Yes, I think they-
health imperatives,
New Day.
Yeah,
former-
yeah,
those,
and then the town clerk's.
Right, and I think you
Increase.
discussed those briefly last week. I don't know if there's any
I don't
more
think we
information
had-
you needed on those.
I don't think I don't necessarily want to speak for everyone, but I don't think we particularly had more questions on those articles.
Chair discretion, it's okay. You have that right.
Do we know any more about some of the articles that may not make it on the final warrant? I think tomorrow is the
Tomorrow night, we have a
meeting, so
two guests coming to speak to the board regarding the so-called stretch code. One from the Green Communities Division of DOER. Actually, both from there. One is a consultant to speak to the building code issues, and one to speak to the Green Communities Act implications, what that means. So that's Article 14. Although the numbers moved a teeny bit.
numbers might change.
Yeah, so, and the others are zoning articles. Well, zoning articles, so.
And I think looking through the zoning articles, and I'll ask for others to comment on this, but looking through the zoning articles, I didn't see anything that looked to have a particular financial implication.
Nothing's yet, no.
We always get,
It's like
I mean,
definitions.
we always either defer to the planning
Yeah,
board,
we
we discuss
typically
it,
do.
and we either defer to the planning board, or sometimes we make a recommendation on, sometimes if it's a heated discussion over a particular subject, we'll make a recommendation.
And if it has financial implications, then.
Right, but I'm saying, if it doesn't have
Yeah.
financial implications, we
Even
still usually make the recommendation to defer to, or,
Yes.
like I said, if it's
And that would-
a hot topic thing.
Nearly every warrant article has a financial implication. Nearly every one. So I think it's prudent to defer to that particular board and at the meeting before the meeting to allow them to offer any opinion that would make us revisit that and say, we option to pass over. And because there's too many things that I don't, I mean, you read through it, I mean, honest to God. Tell me what it is we're voting, and more often than not, next thing you know, you're voting industrial highway in a neighborhood.
If you're accepting a new street, it doesn't cost any money, but you have to plow it, you have to upkeep it,
Exactly.
it doesn't have a direct financial, but.
Yes.
You pay taxes.
Exactly.
Moratoriums on certain plants that grow, for example.
Right.
Cindy?
Two questions, one on the annual and then one back to draft. Article 12, did we find out any more about that one, where they want the easement to go up past the senior center and do some kind of a building, like a, is it gonna be like a over 55 community? Is it going to be housing for the elderly? Do we know any more about that, or are they coming to speak to that to the Board of Selectmen tomorrow?
That is, we are seeking to get the proponents on the selectmen's meeting agenda for next Monday. It's on our agenda for next Monday, but again, we haven't confirmed that the proponents, it's by petition, as you know. But we haven't got confirmation yet that, we have made contact with the office of the proponents, and we hope they'll confirm their attendance at our meeting next Monday night. Best I can tell you as of right now. So, it would be nice to have some information, wouldn't it? Yes, and
It would
again,
be
not
good,
knocking that we don't, but we're just
Yeah,
in the
so
process
just
of
curious
trying
as to where that was
get
all gonna
yes,
fall.
But my
And I
understanding
think we
is
were
it's.
wondering too, which side of the street it was on, which strip
side
it
of
was,
the
which
property.
section it was.
I
You know.
still think it's the section that's closest to the
To the
railroad
tracks.
tracks.
Yes, that's my understanding. So,
And if there's no more on the annual, can I ask something on the draft?
The draft.
Special.
The special, I'm
The
sorry,
special.
yeah, the draft, I'm looking at it, but I can see it. Did we get any more information on the retrofitting in the library? Why that was not on Article 1, unpaid bills?
Yes, what is the question?
Did we get any more information about that retrofitting, why the library did not qualify? And then I think you were gonna see if we could get more information on the Verizon and the telephone bills.
There was an email on those
Yeah,
too.
Was there?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes, I
didn't see.
forwarded that, Sue had answered the information
Okay,
about the
sorry, I
bills. There
didn't
was
see it
a-
today.
With the
Didn't even get on
bills, so
computer.
that information goes to the
Verizon doesn't
public
call you
hearing.
and say,
Well,
you
they
haven't
did.
paid in 3 months?
Yeah, they did after 3 years.
Yeah. So
They didn't have your
Verizon
number,
had
right?
switched over bills to paperless.
They did all of our bills on one, and this
Mostly.
one specific one paperless, and we
So-
figured they were all on the same bill, and next thing you know, they wanted to cancel our fax machine 2.5 years later, the fax line. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Going back, what seems like eons, the three buildings, Town Hall, Library, and COA, actually was the Sage Committee back when Mr. Gerard McClellan was chairman, had begun the process of inquiring as to upgrading, retrofitting the three buildings. And all three had been approved for the appropriate rebates through Ngrid that were available, which were substantial. I think all combined, I think we're in excess of $18,000-19,000 combined. It was, and were approved for the on-bill financing, so that, over X amount of years, it comes off your bill, the savings pays for it off your bill. And then ultimately, again, I'm not sure why, ultimately, after the projects were done, the library was actually rejected. I don't know why that was, Cindy,
Okay, yeah, I didn't turn my computer on at all today,
Yeah,
so.
and the other two, ultimately, were approved, but for some reason, the library was rejected. Now, we're going back almost 11 months now, so.
Would the library know why they were rejected?
No,
Would
the
they-
library actually had nothing to do with it. This was ultimately, this started through through Sage.
So somebody from Sage might know why it was
No,
rejected.
they don't, they don't, they
The
don't.
only
nobody
assumption I
asked.
can make, Rick, is
No,
that
this was-
the libraries was
Sounds like
over
health
$20,000, and everybody else's was below that, so there might have been a dollar cap,
Yeah, but.
you know?
But the bottom line is, obviously, it's a great project, but I basically told, Ngrid and the company, well, yeah, but, you're gonna have to wait to get paid. I said, yeah, it's a great project, but I can't just pay you, this, the fact that we didn't have to bid it is one thing, but the point is that I have to get to a town meeting to pay a bill. If they don't pay for it, you're going to have to sue me, because, this was, by the way, this was a nice project, this wasn't,
Oh,
this isn't the least bit
But I would
amicable.
think that it
but,
would, because to show up to town meeting and know that you have a bill, but you don't know why it was, why, somebody's gonna ask that.
Okay.
Well,
Question.
it's just that the on-bill financing just was after it had been, what's the word I'm looking for? It had been preliminarily approved, was ultimately rejected. I don't know why. The other buildings were approved, and I don't know why after the fact it wasn't. And so, but once again, ultimately, we have the money to pay it. It was a great project. Why would we not pay the bill?
I'm not suggesting
You
don't pay
know,
the bill.
but
I'm just
it-
suggesting we
yes,
find
I-
out why it was, before town meeting, that we find out why it was rejected. There's probably a piece of paper somewhere that says
Well,
that it didn't fit this particular criteria,
I
or,
will obviously see what I can find out, but it's one of those, a situation where, it's an obligation.
right, but
you know,
I
and
would
how
bet
much-
somebody at Sage
I'll
would
do what
know.
I can to find out, but like I said, this was a project that really goes back to, that started a long time ago. Really, ultimately, probably close to probably more than 2 years ago, under, some Sage Committee efforts, and, I'm not sure not sure why the preliminary approval was ultimately not, wasn't followed through on, but I'll see what I can find out, obviously, but in the end, we're fortunate that the funds are available, but, it's still, it was a little frustrating. It was a frustrating phone call, we'll put it that way.
That aside, this is gonna predate both these individuals here, but I'm pretty confident we forgot to pay some pension funds that were due to the joint waterwork piece, our portion, and that was a material amount of money that seemingly sailed by like a sailboat catamaran across the Charles. I'm not too confident that this is gonna have any issues.
But we knew why.
Oh, no, we didn't really know why, we just didn't do it, is
No,
what I
no,
recall.
no, they had a reason why that wasn't, it was being billed to the wrong place. It was being billed to Rockland. Rockland was paying it, we had to pay it back.
Sure, but I guess my point is that we didn't even have much acrimony on town floor because of it. They just said, oh, okay. It was weird to me. They should have had acrimony, but
Yeah. And I don't know what the N-Grid's policy was that, why something was preliminarily approved and then ultimately not. But once again, I'd rather, we could amortize it anyway and get the same effect of on-bill financing, a little interest, but what good would that do? I know that, but I know, but I'm saying realistically,
Yes.
to
Barbara
really,
just
No, no,
wants-
I
Barbara
know.
just
Sean-
wants to know why.
to
I
Sean's,
just like to
to
know.
She's
Sean's
gonna get
small
up at town
potatoes
meeting and ask.
issue, argument really, but,
I
so,
just like to know why.
but it was it was frustrating, trust me, having a conversation with
I'm
somebody
sure.
about,
I've been fighting with.
Because how do two
Sprint for
buildings,
A while, so I understand, but.
get approved and, I thought a library was also a municipal building, last eject, anyway. But, fair enough. It's a valid point.
Other questions on either warrant articles?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
The 21,464 for Republic, right? That is just to pay the trash haul.
Yes.
Because I recall, and maybe I recall incorrectly, they were talking about buying more receptacles.
It's a different
That's,
thing.
that's.
No, I
that's-
understand there's a $10,000
Yeah.
in a different place, but I recall her saying something about that. Am I wrong?
Yeah, this is because they didn't bill us.
Okay, that's
They-
fine.
That was for, they didn't
But
bill
she-
us for, we
She
have
said, oh well, maybe I'm wrong in my recollection.
we have what you call a separate contract for
No, I
condos and
understand all that.
dumpsters, and they just forgot to bill us for a piece of that to, the end of last fiscal year. Was it last fiscal year?
Yeah,
They just
was
didn't bill
it
us.
dumped in, okay.
We had the money to pay it at the time, they just didn't bill us.
In Article 5, are you adding any more to that? Because you have legal liability, DPW to be determined? It's on the special?
Oh,
Article 5.
oh, yes,
the
yes,
amount.
yeah, we just, the end of year menu will be, the town accountant will.
Okay,
ultimately,
just asking.
Yeah, those won't be TBD
Yes,
on the
yes,
actual
exactly.
I mean, and if they're not on there, it would be finance committee end of the year transfers, if we
Yeah.
don't have the number by the time town meeting
Yeah,
comes around.
presumably there'll be a menu, and then there'll be some,
Okay.
very end of year mop-up that, tends
We'll
to
meet towards the end of year,
close the end of the year with
close things out.
pennies. That's right.
So. Any other questions? Mike?
I have a hopefully quick question on warrant Article 6. And it was just really more of the same, just so we kind of have information, because people,
Annual?
annual,
Oh,
They're
yeah.
on.
people,
Oh,
Oh,
you weren't here yet, I think, and he said that they weren't making it tonight, CPA?
Yeah, they're.
Oh, yeah.
so we don't have information
They're
on
They'll be here
coming
next week.
next week.
Yeah, they'll be here
Yep.
next week, yes.
They will be here next week to
Yes.
present to us.
That was all just kind of what a definition of was, because people are asking.
Oh, yeah?
This-
Oh,
this
they'll
is
they'll be
definitely-
here,
Absolutely.
absolutely, they'll be here next week.
They had contacted me probably a month or so ago to make sure that they would be able to meet with us before, like during the process. They were not able to come tonight. They are going to be here next week, so. other questions, comments? Sue, great, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Head back to the peanut gallery.
Yeah, it's nicer back there. It's a lot nicer back there.
All right, that ends our new business. Do we have any liaison reports
I do.
for the night? Barbara?
Just answering questions that we had last week. In the notes, in our notes, one of the, from when the school department was here, it said replacement and upgrading new computer system at the high school. That's not coming out of their budget. That is being provided by the new school building committee funds. Same for laptops and upgrades. Any upgrades in technology are coming from, for the high school, 5 through
The
12,
new
are
school.
coming from the new school building committee, the new school funds. Anything that's younger than 9 years that is working, they're kind of recycling it as far as like technology, and moving it to the other schools to continue to use. Say they have something that's 15 years old and it's still functioning. The thing with the technology is that the longer out you go, the slower it is and it doesn't keep up with the systems of today. But even if something's, say, 15 years old and still functioning, they will use that also. So none of that was coming out of their, or in their
Operating budget.
operating budget. That is all from, and so what I think the misunderstanding was, though, they're waiting until the end of the project to purchase the most current technology that they can at that time. And also oftentimes, some of the things they may have been looking at, the prices will go down as it becomes not as right off the presses. So they, their technology is gonna be purchased at the very end of the project.
And I do know they have been consulting with the head of the technology for the Marshfield schools, who is very knowledgeable and very frugal.
To know.
So this is gonna be then monies that they haven't used for the new school. So if they come in under budget,
No.
they can use,
They've
This
already,
has already
the
been
money's already been committed
for technology.
for all the
so
technology.
it's already included in all of the stuff.
It's in the
Okay,
budget.
That's how I was reading it, because it looked like it was like,
Yeah,
okay,
no,
so
it's
they're
already
going to
included.
ask
They
for
just
more
aren't-
money, and I'm like, well,
They
why?
just haven't purchased it yet. They're waiting to actually do the purchase. They have the budget for it in that
In the big
school
picture.
budget.
Okay.
The new school budget.
New school
But
budget.
it's, they're not
spending that until.
spending it until
as
the
late as
very
possible.
end. Everything else is done and they know, okay, well,
Okay.
so we have X amount of dollars. This is gonna give us the most bang for their buck, which is probably why they're talking
So
to
have those
someplace
minutes
like.
been approved? Because it just was kind of, I wasn't here for that one, so I couldn't approve the minutes, but I had read them and I was questioning them because it just, when they said computers for the new high school, it made it look like they
I
were
think
gonna
they were approved,
ask
Cindy.
for
We can-
more over
They-
and above.
The
They look, I think they
computers
were
were
approved last
approved a couple meetings ago by the school building committee. They waited until now just to make sure the money was there, which it will be, there's no problem with that. And they're now going to execute the contracts.
Right, she's asking about the minutes though, right?
In the minutes, it just read funny to me in the minutes.
So maybe we
Like,
can,
if I was to
like,
read
look
the
at the
minutes,
minutes
can we,
and, are we allowed to do that?
I don't know.
I've never done that. After it's been approved, are you allowed to?
What, they passed minutes?
After minutes have
To-
been approved,
Discuss something that's in.
if you
an
realize like,
approved set
oh,
of
maybe
If
minutes.
that's.
votes, we're just gonna put it in these meetings as a new discussion,
So-
which I,
So we can
And so then,
certainly
like,
look
you
at
double
what the
notate,
minutes
see
are.
meeting minutes of,
Verification, yeah.
blah, 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 okay.
verification for the,
So I could not find my copy of those meeting minutes,
I have,
which is strange because I put everything in here.
I'll find it and give it to you. I know I have, it might be,
I believe it was April 5th.
that's not come across.
Yep, the schools were April 5th.
I'll find it, I know it
Yeah,
here.
yeah, it- because I'm sorry.
That's all I have. Part of it.
Any other liaison reports? Peter, no liaison report?
What? No.
Not this week. Usually count on you for one.
Well, the meeting's not till next week.
Correspondence, I was,
Where is it?
check the mailbox. We will check our correspondence next week. I don't think 1 week is going to kill us on that. We do have minutes from our last meeting on April 26th.
Mr. Chairman, before we get to the meeting minutes, just as a
Yes.
matter of housekeeping,
Yes.
we have an updated budget
Yes.
in a hard copy. Can we get a electronic copy to reflect those changes?
The changes reflected in the electronic copy. We had an electronic copy passed around last week.
Dated 4/27, so this one has been updated to reflect the Council of Aging and some minor miscellaneous things.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Has been helpful to have the online copy or the digital copy of that, not actually online. Everyone have the minutes from last week? Have you looked over them?
Motion to approve meeting minutes of April 26, 2017.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the meeting minutes? Very expertly prepared by our recording secretary. With no discussion, all those in favor of approving, say
All right.
opposed. Wiggy is abstaining as he was not here. The minutes are approved. Our next meeting will be next Wednesday.
Before we,
Yes.
just because I'm always concerned with the time crunch that we can get under,
Mhm.
our recommendations need to be made by next.
Next meeting.
Next
We need to
meeting.
make our recommendations, yes.
So maybe we should kind of get a
Sure.
consensus at this point, possibly, where people are at with, if there's certain specific things that we, or departments, or certain pieces of certain departments, or anything that anyone knows for sure at this point that we need to review.
Scrutinize.
Or,
Yeah, I know I've been looking over the budget and the numbers, I'm assuming you all have. Are there specific areas of concern or need for discussion that you've seen?
and are we gonna
thought of?
go over, like, so, I'm just wondering how we're gonna, when next week comes and we have petitioners in, and then are we gonna go over the budget, department by department, line by line, next week?
Do you need to do that?
Yeah,
Usually,
we-
the last year budgets have just been voted to approve the budget as recommended. We do line by line or do we? Depends on
Haven't
how you
done
want to do it.
line by line.
I just didn't know if anyone
We
had
haven't
time
done
to-
line, we haven't done line by line while I've
I mean,
been
we've
on.
gone line by line when each department is here, but,
Yes.
so I just didn't know if, next week, if
I
anyone needs to
think-
pull something out of a line that they're still, you know,
So obviously, I'm not the most tenured person
Well-
here, but the time that I've been on the committee, what we have typically done, like you said, when the departments are here, we go line by line. And then during this post-department process, we bring up specific areas where people had notes or concerns or issues to address those particular lines that were concerns or are remaining concerns after all of the department head meetings, especially depending on where things are at with the overall balancing of the budget. A few years ago, that was more of a concern. Now it had, last year in this, it's been a little smoother, but
I guess I'm just wanting to know if there's anything that we're gonna be in a, you know, that we need
In a-
to debate and
in a
kind of go over
drag-out
and give
fight.
ourselves time to do that, I just want to make sure that,
Do you have concerns that you? are
I don't have
going
any
to propose?
specific, no, but I know there's been things that have been brought up, and I don't.
I'm sure if we had any, they would have come up by now.
And we have, I know that we have discussed things after different departments have come and gone.
Right.
And we've talked about things with the town manager and the assistant town manager, that we've had concerns, and I know they took those back to the financial team.
I just want,
as-
like I said,
as
just
part of
want to
the
make sure that we're
process,
leaving
so.
ourselves enough time to
It's
go through,
definitely-
and, because we're gonna have to also go back through the warrant and
It is,
vote.
yeah, it's
take votes
definitely
on all the
going to take,
articles,
it's going to take us a while next week.
and see petitioners.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure we have,
We have how
And
many
it should be,
petitioners next week?
it should, what was that?
How many petitioners do we have next week?
I believe it's just the CPA coming in next week.
Yeah, unless they say it's anybody, there's really nobody else, unless you wanted John Stone, I don't think there's anybody else.
Did anyone have any questions on the sewer items that we feel we needed John Stone to come to address?
who, is it the CP, who's coming in about the stretch? No one's coming in about that? We're not discussing it.
The selectmen have a
Okay,
meeting
okay.
tomorrow about the
Yep,
stretch.
that's probably what I'm thinking about.
So Rick will have more information next week.
Yeah, if you'd like, I'll certainly bring, whatever materials, that are distributed Monday with me. Make everything available, obviously,
Yep.
if that's of interest to the finance committee, obviously.
Yeah, I think that one particularly because there are definite, especially longer-term financial implications that are.
Love to have you on Monday night for those of you who.
Anyone that can
I'll be
attend
careful for those of you who.
the selectmen meeting Monday night, definitely do.
All right, so one meeting's gonna be enough time to get our recommendations.
My personal opinion, I think the answer is yes. That's just my opinion.
Yep, that's it, that's all I wanted to know. I wanted to feel
I-
comfortable
my-
leaving here tonight knowing that we're not,
I think the hot button items were the ones we had talked about with regards to the school, with
And the
regards to
capital.
the unpaid bills, and then kind of the strategy behind, what are we doing with our free cash? And I know that, I think that the town manager had answered those questions to the best of his abilities last week, and it's the decision of the community to go forward in that particular direction, so I think that's.
So
from my vantage point.
what I will say to try to continue to address that concern is for everyone over the next couple of days to really take a hard last look at the budget. We'll be getting the online copy again tonight, the updated version. Email me with any concerns and areas that you do want to talk about, so I can make sure that we address them all efficiently in next week's meeting. And if it looks like there's the possibility that the one night will not be enough, it'll look to potentially schedule a Thursday meeting for us as well for next week.
they think the recommendations need to be posted by
I
Thursday.
think by Friday.
Oh, is it
I
Friday?
believe it's 10 days, so I believe it's Friday.
Friday the 12th.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's why
That's good to know
Thursdays-
too, because
Yeah.
for some reason I had it in my head that it was like Thursday.
No,
And so
Friday.
that was why I was really concerned that maybe we might run into a problem.
No,
but
I knew that
if there was any.
we had Friday in our
Okay.
Thursday in our back pocket. so.
Okay, didn't realize that.
Does that sound good to everyone? All right. Any other discussion? I think that was very good to hash out and bring up. Thank you. No other discussion, any other motions?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, abstaining? The ayes have it. We are adjourned.
Thank you for sharing.